Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast, a regular contributor to Knicks Film Schools, because he does occasionally pen some words that my newsletter is unworthy of, but he graces it with their presence. Anyway, he is with Jomboy Media, but you could hear him on Talkin Knicks. And I'm going to do something before I officially bring him in. I'm going to do something I don't think I ever do, because I just checked. Somehow only 3,658 people are following Tom Piccolo on Twitter. I want you, if you are listening to this podcast right now or watching it on YouTube, to literally press pause, or if you can multitask, which I can't, do whatever you got to do. Go on your twitter.com app for as long as it may continue to exist, which by the time you're listening to this, who knows? And go search up at Tom_Piccolo. That's Piccolo. And I'm starting there before we talk about anything, because your film work on Twitter has always been great. I always enjoy it. This year, it has, I think, risen to a new level. And my first question to you is that cognizant? Did you want to get more into the film? Because it feels to me like you've stepped up your game.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I actually got introduced to the new Air app through you guys. I think they knew I contributed to Knicks Film School, and so they hooked me up with it. And it's just like, not to do a blatant plug for it, but like it does make the whole process of it less onerous. And so, before I'd see stuff and I'd like have my own process with like QuickTime or Zoom and recording, and it was a whole thing. And using this app, I can just like use a video that I've used on Twitter and just like draw on it, narrate over it. It's very simple. And so it's more of a time thing, because I just like really don't have that much time these days. As you guys know, I have like a 5-month-old kid that takes up a lot of my time.
Congratulations, officially.
Thank you.
On the pod.
Yeah, man, it's been wild. Jomboy Media allowed me to defer some of my paternity leave. So I'm actually like currently on some paternity leave right now, which is amazing. Because those first few weeks of paternity leave are they don't really tell you. It's not fun. like they
didn't tell you? You didn't get that memo there, dude, in your inbox?
It was brutal. I mean, now it is actually fun. Like he's laughing, he's smiling. Like just this past week, he learned to roll over. Similarly, the Knicks also learned to roll. Actually, I told myself I wasn't going to make.
That was great.
I told myself I wasn't going to make a fatherhood pun on here, and I like led with it. I hate myself for that.
Listen, dude, just because it is a joke that relates to being a dad does not make it a dad joke. In my book, at least. But of course, I'm probably the wrong person to ask. So I make your dad jokes. Listen,
I appreciate the Twitter plug and all that.
All kidding aside, like if you're listening to this now and you don't follow Tom, like he honestly, it's a free app as far as I know. Still, you should, if you don't have Twitter, like go download Twitter just to follow Tom. Because you put out the little film threads with using Air, but also even before that, you had Air. Like you just find really great stuff. Like you and Benji, to me, are the two. It's like you guys and then everybody else, and then there's a bunch of other people, or like a gap and then everybody else as far as Knicks film stuff comes up. Anyway, so yeah, all good plays you've been analyzing, right, with the Knicks this year. Just a lot of positivity.
Well, it's funny because in that first quarter against OKC, obviously the Knicks put up their franchise record for points in the first quarter, and all of my videos that I tweeted were very negative. And I was like, am I being a killjoy right now? Like the Knicks are really cruising on offense, and all I'm doing is complaining about the defense in every clip. And I was like, no, I can see where this is going. I think all of us did at that point, but I was glad that I went down that route, because that's kind of what stuck with me the longest.
So when you come on, I always like to just kind of give you the runway and talk about whatever you find interesting at the moment. I know one of the topics you want to talk about is RJ Barrett, which we get to, right at the top if you want. I do, since you brought it up, want to go through a couple things with the defense. And I wanted to just like kind of pick your brain about it. So, by the way, the Knicks ranked 24th in defense right now, Do you want to wager a guess as to what they ranked in defense after 13 games last season?
You know what? Just because I know Kemba was playing a lot of that time, I bet it was the same. I was at 24th.
They were 25th, or either that or they're 25th now, and they were 26th last year. They were one spot lower in the league rankings at this same point in time last year.
Yeah, and I see with cleaning the glass, they're the 26th ranked defense right now. So
I think NBA stats has them like 1 or 2 spots higher. With like, for anybody who doesn't know, cleaning glass filters out garbage time. But yeah, I was looking up, so I was digging into some of the stats because I wrote something tomorrow. Spoiler alert, that the problems may center on not completely, but in part on a certain power forward on New York's roster. And I found it interesting that, like, you know, the Knicks are giving up a ton of threes this year, which is getting a lot of the blame, but they rank the same in terms of frequency of opponent threes this year as they did last year. They're 28th this year. They were 28th last year. And the year they were the 4th best defense, they were 11th best defense last year. The year before that, they were 4th best defense. They ranked 23rd in frequency of opponent shots from three. The difference is that the last 2 years, opponents were shooting at a bottom 4 clip in comparison to other teams. And this year they're just shooting league average. Like, I know it seems like opponents are making every three. They're just making them at a league average rate. But when you give up so many, that's obviously a big problem. And then the other thing is that whereas the Knicks were one of the elite teams at taking away the rim over Tibbs' first 2 years, this year they're just like, not that they're not taking it away at all. I mean, opponents are still getting there at the 10th lowest frequency, which is like, you know, that's fine. But they're also converting those looks at the 10th highest rate. So like you put those two numbers together and the Knicks are basically a league average defense when it comes to the rim. And they're like a, you know, I don't know, you put the 3-point numbers together and they're like a bottom 5, 6, 7 team when it comes to threes. And you put those two things together and it doesn't make for a great product. So yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the defense, I guess, generally, first of all.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unpack with the defense. You know, some of it is schematic with Tibbs. Some of it is personnel based. Some of that's intertwined. I think, you know, I'm looking again at cleaning the glass and New York's half court defense.
10th.
I'm looking 10th. Right now. For points per play, I'm looking at 12th. And that's much better than I would have expected. It is the transition defense that is truly crushing this team. Like they are, I believe it's 20. They're 28th in transition defense right now. Specifically
off steals. They're giving up a fake number with 160, essentially 164 points per 100 possessions on steals, which is like in an empty gym. If you gave a guy 100 chances to run down the court and attempt to put the ball in the basket, I think they would score about 164 points on those 100 tries.
Yeah. And you try and rationalize why that could be. Like, is there a scheme element to that? Like, we know that sometimes offensive rebounding can lead to bad transition defense if everyone's crashing the glass. You know, it's mostly just been Mitch in this year and in years past. Like, there's really no reason for, I mean, certainly the guards. I think that what we're seeing is like Jalen Brunson is driving a lot. RJ Barrett, as we know, always drives a lot. That's leaving some issues. And Julius Randle is, you know, Julius Randle is one of the worst transition defenders, period, in the league. And I don't like pinning everything on Julius because I think we knew his deficiencies going in. I think that part of the reason I wanted to talk about RJ Barrett and you know, we can talk more about him at the end, but
no, let's do it now. Let's talk now.
It's just, you know, you mentioned my writing for KFS. I wrote this piece about RJ Barrett kind of preseason, just before the season kicked off. And, you know, I put a lot of time and thought into that and like really waxed poetic about RJ Barrett, you know, like,
can I just stop you for once? It's your, of everything I've read, I don't know, 30 of your pieces now over the course of like how many years I've been reading you. It's my favorite thing you've ever written. It was phenomenal because it's one of the few things I could count on one hand the amount of things that I read from someone that made me materially reconsider a position that I had taken after I can't count how many hours I've spent thinking and contemplating fucking RJ Barrett's game, and reading that piece. I was like, you know what? Tom made me rethink this player who I've been watching day in and day out for 3 years. I had to say that up front because the piece was phenomenal.
And I appreciate that. And it was like, it was a serious effort on my end. I honestly it was an ode to RJ Barrett is what it was. And like, I came into the season, I wasn't someone who had these ridiculous expectations of this player. Like, I think 2 years ago, I was given an over-under of 1.5 All-Star games for his career. And I think I took the under. I think it's more likely that he makes 0 or 1 All-Star games than multiple. And I don't think that's a slight to him as a player. I really like him as a player. But this season has been real challenging. He has struggled on both ends. Like, there are some things like shooting the three that comes and goes with him. We've seen very good shooters struggle. Klay Thompson's had a really rough start to not to compare RJ to Klay, but we all know shooting can be streaky. I really don't care about that. For me, it's been, the RJ's defense has been really disappointing. I don't think that I'm not trying to slight the guy. He's not talented enough or skilled enough to like skate by on his athleticism and talent on defense.
Just say it. Hold on. Wait. There's no more pussyfooting around this stuff. I'm sorry. You sign a 9-figure contract. The quiet parts now get said out loud. They have to. Because what the fuck are we doing here? This, as you can tell, this gets me very agitated.
No, I know. And I know you're saying like you've been kind of more of an RJ detractor is probably harsh, but like you've been more critical of RJ than most.
I just want the conversation to be accurate. That's all. That's what you're doing. That's all you're doing is you're just having a real conversation about what this player is and what he's doing and what he's not doing.
There's multiple pieces to it. So like, when people argue that RJ Barrett is a better all around player than like a Tyler Hero or a Jordan Poole, the understanding is that it's because RJ in theory is a two-way player. And for him to be a two-way player, he has to do a couple things. He has to be fundamentally sound on defense. Yep. And he has to work his ass off. Like he can't just, follow, not to throw Randle under the bus, but like, sometimes the best player sets the tone defensively. And like RJ has been closer to Julius on defense than a lot of people are willing to admit. And it is RJ doesn't have the benefit of like scoring as efficiently as Randle has so far this season. It's been really challenging. Prez put out a great thread of RJ and specifically his struggles with closing out. And I think that like, that's what we got to do is we have to get specific with what he's struggling with. He is really having a hard time closing out. And some of that is technique. And I think that a lot of people are going to point to the coach and be like, the coach isn't getting on him in film sessions about this. A lot of this is interconnected and tough to parse out. The bottom line is RJ Barrett has to be a better defender in the half court. He has to be a better help defender. He has to be much better in transition. There was one play against Brooklyn that just really got under my skin where he had an opportunity to contest a layup by Joe Harris. You're not going to get posterized by Joe Harris. Nope. He didn't even jump for it. I was just like, that's pathetic, man. Like, I'm not saying that RJ Barrett has to be Danny Green on defense, but Danny Green wasn't some freak athlete. You know what I mean? Like Danny Green just really gave a shit and like made that his calling and it took some pride in it. Like I want RJ Barrett to like take some pride in his defense. And that's kind of irrespective of coaching at this point for me.
Well, a couple of things you just hit on. One, if Sundays, and I should preface this by saying that I don't believe I read any quotes from RJ after the game specifically addressing his only playing 2 minutes in the second half and his not playing in the fourth quarter, because the problem is that the folks at MSG tend to curate the things that they send out to people like me who are on the listservs for getting the post-game quotes. So after a game like that, funny enough, wouldn't you believe it, a lot of the quote sheets are going to be awfully short. That said, Jalen Brunson, Steve Popper tweeted it today, was like, I wouldn't play me either with the defensive performance that I gave. Now, I don't know if RJ was asked a direct question, but I did read the quotes that were attributed to him afterwards, and I did not see anything that would, border on accountability. But if that wasn't a shot across the bow by Tom Thibodeau, I don't know what was.
Yeah, and I understand that there's a segment of Knicks fans who are upset that Julius Randle doesn't get held accountable to the same degree.
I want to get to, let's save that because that's a separate issue, but let's keep the focus on RJ because I think that's what that was. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah. I mean, we have seen Thibodeau ride the hot hand before. And I think that and Thibodeau was asked specifically about it. And that's what he said he was doing, was riding the hot hand, and the group with Quickly was doing well. And there may have been something to that. Look, I had these feelings about RJ long before the OKC game.
Yes.
That game didn't change my opinion of how he's been playing. I think that people are pointing to certain statistics of his points, rebounds, assists, the last 5 games. They look okay. And it's like, are you watching the games, guys?
Don't care.
I think there was a game. Was it Minnesota where he had 6+ turnovers? But he shot efficiently.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was the Minnesota game, but I know the game you're talking about where he turned the ball over a ton. I just have to say this where the assists are concerned, because RJ's passing is the thing that I've probably been on more than anything, because this was a guy who was defined as a playmaker coming out of college, and his assists per 36 minutes have been flat for 3 years now, and they're lower than what they've been the last 3 years this season. And I went back last season at one point and I watched literally every assist he had. And I think people don't realize sometimes, and this goes for rebounds too, because again, rebounds, a lot of it is like scheme. It's like people cite Mitchell Robinson's defensive rebounding numbers. Who cares? The guards are instructed. If you're nearby and Mitch is nearby, the guard is going to get the rebound because he could, and sometimes that's RJ. So like, rebound numbers, I don't care. Assist numbers. I went back and watched all of his assists. Do you have any idea how many of his assists last year came from just he's on the perimeter and he tosses it to a guy and the guy, shoots a 3? Now, a lot of assists are like that. But don't then tell me that RJ is in the same category as player X or player Y, who when you go and watch what they do as far as the impact of the players that are around them and how much easier they make their lives, it's not comparable. And then we haven't even gotten into the efficiency stuff, which is what I actually haven't even minded his efficiency this year. I think his efficiency has been okay.
Yeah, just to put a bow quickly on the defensive end,
let's get back to the defense because that's important.
Real quick, I'm going to be critical of RJ here. It's because I expect a lot of this player, and I don't. It's not like I think he can't get to this level. I just think we have to be honest about what he's been through 13 games this season, and really have a clear-eyed look at it. And he's flat out been a very bad defensive player. Now I did look at the numbers and the lineups with RJ in and Randle out defensively have been very good. Yeah. That's something to note. And I think that we should, but we should also note that he looks slow, as Prez pointed out in that great thread. I was having a hard time pinpointing what it's been with him defensively. And it has been just kind of a lack of engagement, a disinterest in transition, a higher turnover rate leading to those transition opportunities. And he throws a lot of pick sixes. His turnovers can be particularly damning and frustrating. We've seen teammates get upset. They're open, on fast breaks and RJ doesn't get it to him. And that leads to defensive issues too. But his passing is another thing I really wanted to talk about. So just real quick, we all saw the highlight pass of RJ throwing that live dribble, right-handed bullet cross court to Obi Toppin, perfectly in the shooting pocket. And Obi unfortunately had one of his dreadful misses. I think he hit the side of the backboard or something. And when Obi misses, he really misses. He makes the most of those, and that he's been our best 3-point shooter. So try and factor that in. But the fact that RJ had that pass in his bag,
bingo, is
confounding to me, because so much of my issue with him this season has been his thought process. It has felt like he has predetermined what he wants to do on each play, where it seems like I'm going to do a little, pop psychology here. He got this contract, and there are times where he's like, I'm going to be the man and I'm going to dictate my will onto this defense. And RJ is not good enough to do that. And not a lot of players are. LeBron James can flip a switch from facilitator to scorer. Chris Paul can, get his and then go get his teammates points. RJ's not on that level or not particularly close, and that's okay. He doesn't have to be, but he also has to read the defense. He has to take what the defense gives him. He can put pressure on the defense, but I know you always talk like Tibbs' offense, read and react. He's like having memorized something. He's not reading or reacting. He's just like,
he's just doing.
He'll throw lobs to Mitch or whoever the rolling center is. You know, they'll do their pistol action to get him a screen going downhill to his left in the middle of the floor, and he'll throw a lob when it's not even there. And it's just like, you just decided you were going to do that before. You didn't even look at the defense. Like, there are shooters who are open, and it's very frustrating when it's like a not a basketball IQ, but just like a processing issue.
I don't think anyone questions his basketball IQ. Like, I think we all agree he's a smart player. And didn't you clip another play from the same game where it was Brunson drove, kicked it to RJ drove, and then kicked it back out to Brunson, reload? Like, a simple play like that that's not.
But that's the read and react stuff. That's why I thought it was so notable. I was like, this is so many of RJ's assists I've seen, like, other than the just kind of pass to the perimeter, are set plays. These are like plays where he knows what the read is going in. The nice thing about the pass to Brunson in the corner was it was improv. You know what I mean? And that just isn't something we've seen a ton of from him. It's like he's so locked in on scoring and proving that he's like this bucket getter that his playmaking has definitely taken a hit. And part of that has been just like a processing issue, which has really worried me more than the shooting, for sure. Yeah. No,
and I just like, I mean, the true RJ stance have probably shut the podcast off a while ago. Which
I think RJ can and will get better.
But I want to make a point to something that you're saying, and this to me is going to put my bow on the defensive thing. I believe RJ approaches defense as a star player would approach defense, which is that he will try to pick and choose his moments. And like, we haven't seen enough of those moments, as opposed to approaching defense like, I don't know, Jose Alvarado approaches defense, or, you know, some such player of that
player.
Yeah, a role player. Someone who's trying to like just stay on the team. And I hate to keep doing this, but I'm going back again. I do not think it was an accident that he averaged 20 points a game last year. I think that meant something to him. And I think he wanted to hit that number because in his mind, that number meant that he joined a certain group of players where he got above that threshold. And I would ask anybody, the people who do tweet out the points, rebounds, assists, and who are convinced that he is going to, be a certain something, and who do take it as a slight that someone like you would suggest that you think he's not going to make, multiple all-star teams. Go back and like jog your memory over the last few weeks when you've watched Giannis and Donovan Mitchell and DeJounte Murray and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Kevin Durant and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and even, I hate to say it, Tyrese Maxey. And like, be honest with yourself about what you were watching. And you could be like, oh, Macker, you just named X number of the best players in the league. Well, guess what? Lots of games coming up. There's going to be a lot more of, and if you're someone who's like, well, RJ Barrett is destined for all NBA, level play, like, you need to be one of the top 15 guys in order to get to that level. Even to be an all-star, you have to be one of the top 20, 24 guys, give or take a few with injury replacements. He's not in that category of player. And I personally don't believe he's ever going to be in that category of player. Now, I think he can get close, but for him to get close, and this is going to bring it right back to what you said, it needs to be on both ends, because he doesn't have that caliber of offensive game, I don't believe, to get to those heights, but he can make up for it on defense. And we're just not seeing it right now.
Yeah. And I'll get back to the 20 points per game thing in a second, and I know we're like ping-ponging back and forth between.
No, I love this.
Defense, but like, it's because we have a lot of feelings. To your point about Jose Alvarado, like, that's a player who makes defenses feel him. Yeah. RJ does not make defenses feel him. Whether you're looking at like steals and blocks, which I know are kind of a superficial way to look at it, but that does represent activity. That represents getting your hands in passing lanes. We've all got the stats. Like, he's in the 9th percentile for steal percentage among wings.
Oh my God. I didn't even know that.
It's never been much better in his career. He's in the 13th percentile for block percentage among wings. And I've got a deflection stat that is just ugly, and I'm hesitant to even read it because I don't want to pile on. Again, I'm an RJ fan. I'm an ardent supporter of this player, but like we have to be honest. Like, there are 54 players who play at least 33 minutes per game this season. RJ ranks dead last in deflections per game.
Oh my God.
He's not active. He's not an active defensive player. Defenses don't feel him. And for him to reach his potential, they need to. He needs to be a defensive force. You know, the clip of LeBron James looking over to the sideline and seeing Kawhi Leonard as a young Kawhi Leonard coming in, and LeBron James just like, damn it. Like,
yep.
You know, RJ doesn't need to be Kawhi Leonard, but he needs offensive players to be really bummed out when he checks back in, to like really feel it. And that's not where we're at right now. On the 20 points per game thing, I think it's also important to note that, and I don't think you're insinuating this, RJ Barrett is not a selfish player. I don't think he's selfish by nature.
I don't think so. I don't think he is either.
I think he's just really in his head right now about his role on the team, about his place in the pecking order. Like, he wants to prove he is that guy. And like unfortunately, like his play hasn't kind of shown through, and really on any sense. Like, he's struggling for the 3-point line, but at the rim, I know everyone keeps citing like, oh, his percentages at the rim are better. They are marginally better at best. And if you're looking at using the eye test, I don't think it's much better at all. I don't think it's going to hold. Like, and I know, I'm being so negative about RJ.
No, but I'm listen, again, we're not giving opinions here. We're just giving data, and the piece of data that I'm going to look for right now
I have it up. Like, he was 55% at the rim last season. He's 59% through 13 games.
And could you read
I think that he's been feasting against really bad defenses, like the Detroit Pistons twice, who have the worst defense in the league. And it's like, it wouldn't shock me if that number at the rim ticked down as the games wore on against better defenses. And, you know, I came into this season, I know everyone wants to blame Tibbs. I think we've got plenty to talk about. That could be a whole separate podcast, frankly. But I didn't come into this season wondering, oh, is the coach who's coached the same way for decades going to finally change his ways? That's not what I came into the season wondering. I came into the season wondering, how's RJ Barrett going to look? How has he improved finishing at the rim? How's he improved playmaking? How's he improved making his free throws? He's gotten a little better there, but though his free throw attempts per 36 is down. Like, It's just, the Knicks were kind of noted. It was noted multiple times. They were beating the teams they should beat. They were losing to the teams they should lose to. That was kind of the mantra of the fan base for the first few weeks of the season, first month of the season. Can't argue that. I still wasn't happy. And everyone's like, why are you everyone in my life who are Knicks fans, they're like, why are you unhappy with this? And it's like, it's kind of because of RJ. He hasn't shown me that he's like improved in these ways that I really wanted him to. And again, I think he can, and there's a chance that he will. It's just so far this season, it's been a sobering kind of reality check for him. And I'm happy to move on and talk about other stuff. And I'm sure the fan base would rather hear me shit on Tibbs, and I can do that too. Yeah,
but like, to your point, and the stat that I wanted to read before, RJ last rookie year, he was assisted on 37% of his looks at the rim, 39% his second year, 44% last year. RJ is being assisted on 64% of his looks at the rim this season. Basically, the amount of looks that he's being assisted on at the rim have doubled since last year. So I sure as hell hope he's upped his percentage points at the rim by a few ticks, because when you're getting assisted that much more, and he's playing with Jalen Brunson, you should be getting assisted a lot more. That's why you go out and spend $100 million on Jalen Brunson, in addition to his efficient shot making. The stuff with RJ and why it matters so much, I think, and like Tibbs is what he is. Like, the organization could fire him while we're on this podcast. And you know what my reaction is going to be? Okay. Like, what's it really going to do? Like, yeah, we'll get some more creativity with lineups, and like maybe it'll light a fire under their ass a little bit. But it's like, if they fire Tibbs, like literally right now, what would your reaction be? Your honest reaction?
Honestly, I might zag a little bit, where I actually would be surprised if they
I'd be shocked, but like, would you be like, oh yes, all of their problems are answered. We're going to get so much more from the young players. We're going to see so much more, and like all this.
Not necessarily. No, I mean, to your point, I want to see the creative lineups because, like, I think that the most ardent RJ supporter would say RJ is not being put in a position to be successful with these lineups. So they're playing with the lack of spacing. How can he finish at the rim? I don't buy all the way into that. I think there's something to it. Like, yeah, you could play. I was looking at some lineup data, and any lineup with the big wings, RJ or Reddish at power forward, total has only played 21 possessions this season. They're plus 64 points per 100 possessions. Like, it's
egregiously
a tiny
low
sample, but like, you could play these big wings at power forward and open things up a little bit, and that could make life a little easier for guys like RJ. I'm not saying there's nothing that can be done from a coaching standpoint to help him, but it goes both ways too. Like, RJ does have to help himself. He has to improve in some ways as well. Like, transition is one area where I think that kind of his warts show most, where like he makes these decisions that he's going to attack the rim in transition, regardless of how many players are back, regardless of the angle he has. And I'm looking at NBA stats, and I think he's 13th percentile in transition efficiency.
Did it go up from, he was averaging 0.80 points per transition possession. And just to give people an idea, like the average is something over 1. I mean, now granted, ton of transition.
The 15th percentile right now, it's 0.82 points per possession.
Okay, so he went up a little bit, but like, could you read some of the guys that are around him in terms of the same frequency?
I mean, looking at like the highest frequency, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is at 1.32, Tyrese Maxey 1.69, Giannis 1.29, Jason Tatum 1.45. Like, these are
he's a point.
That's the cream of the crop.
But like, again, but that's why I think really my ire shouldn't be directed at RJ, because RJ isn't, well, maybe I guess he is a little bit. RJ isn't responsible for the conversation that happens around him. The people that have anointed him as this something that I don't believe he is, I think they're really where my ire is directed, because these are just facts. These are just numbers. And yeah, he's 22. There's time to improve, but I think your overall premise today,
I want to see it.
Yeah,
I want to see it so
it's
bad.
Year 4.
I just really am rooting for RJ. I want him to be the best player on this team. He's not there yet. I feel like I've already turned the fan base against me enough. But
it's just about being honest. It's just about having an honest
Go
conversation.
back and read my preseason piece on RJ to show how I feel about this player. Like, I care deeply about this man who I've never met before. I want nothing but success for him. And so that's why I'm harshly critical, because I care.
The very last thing on him, I've said this before, I'm still waiting for the investigative reporting piece that comes out and says why Leon Rose set that deadline. Either trade Donovan Mitchell to us today, or we sign RJ Barrett to this extension. And I'm so fascinated by that decision. And I will always believe that it was basically his best chance to try to bluff Danny Ainge into making the trade that he wanted to make. And Danny Ainge basically looked at him and was like, yeah, we don't think, like, RJ isn't that important to us, So if you sign him to the extension, then whatever, we'll move on. We'll figure something else out, whether it's with you or another team. And they did.
And I think you and I can move on from RJ.
We can move on. What else do you want to talk about? I mean, is there, what could we say about Julius Randle? Is there anything worth saying about Julius Randle that hasn't been said?
Real quick on the Tibbs front, because you asked me if I'd be surprised if he got
fired. Talk about Tibbs.
And I actually would be surprised right now, because I think that people always talk, and I know you and Jeremy talk smartly about how firing a coach is one of the few kind of cards that the front office can play, right? That's their hand. Like, you get one of those and that's it. Mm-hmm. And that's smart, but no one really talks about kind of the cards that Tibbs has in his hand. And like, Leon Rose can go to Tibbs and be like, hey, we're the 26th ranked defense. What's going on? And Tibbs can credibly say, like, Mitchell Robinson's been out the last 5 games. What's our defense been the last 5 games? Oh, I think it's dead last or 29th since Mitch has gone out.
Sounds well. I know they're 20. 6th or 27th in the last 7 games, but
it's even worse since Mitch has gone out. He'd be like, Quentin Grimes has been hurt and situational the entire beginning of this season. So my 2 best defensive players aren't even in the rotation right now. Like, I think not that I'm agreeing with that line of thinking necessarily. I think that, there are cases to be made that specifically against OKC, how helpful would Mitchell Robinson really have been against these floor spacing 5s, your Mike Muscalas, your, shout out Bucknell. I was his TA. Love Mike Muscala.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Dude, I had him on my fantasy team for like a hot minute this season.
There you go.
He produces.
Yeah. Bucknell Bison represent. But against your Pokus, these were 5s who were stretching the floor. We saw Jericho Sims struggle with that. Isaiah Hartenstein really wasn't. I mean, Isaiah was still trying to protect the rim and was failing to get out to his man out on the perimeter. He's leading to swings to bad closeouts. I don't know that Mitch would have actually helped against OKC. I don't know that he actually would have helped against Boston when they were just targeting Julius Randle in pick and rolls. You know what I mean? But I do think Tibbs would play those hands and be like, I don't have my best defensive players. How do you expect me to just cobble together a good defensive team?
So I think, I don't know if this is going to come off as a defensive Tibbs or more of an accusation of him. I don't think and this is more on the front office. It's more on Tibbs because I believe that Tibbs wants Mitch here, and Tibbs is the driving force in the fact that Mitchell Robinson is still on this team. I believe that. So yeah, blame Tibbs for it, but I don't believe it's an excuse because I believe with New York's current personnel, an offense with Mitchell Robinson in it is more untenable than a defense without Mitchell Robinson in it. And because I always have the numbers to back up my opinion somewhere, I may have to finagle a little bit, but I always have numbers. You want to guess what the defensive rating of this team is when Isaiah Hartenstein, who I know he didn't have a great game against OKC, nobody did, but I think he's been pretty good on defense this year, and more than respectable overall. His defensive rating he's played 303 possessions this season without Julius Randle. You want to guess what the team's defensive rating is in those 303 possessions?
I imagine it's very good because any lineup data without Julius Randle right now, it defensively seems like it's elite.
It is 98 points per 100 possessions. And that's 303 possessions, which is like, I don't know, 140 minutes or so, 150 minutes, 160 minutes, something like that. So like not, not crazy. And a lot of those minutes were against backups for sure. So I don't want to make it out to be like it's everything, but man, I just watching them this year. And again, we just talked about RJ's defense. Not great. Jalen Brunson. I love Jalen Brunson. I'm the biggest Jalen Brunson fan on earth at this point. We've seen his warts. We've seen there are just certain things that you can't really avoid when you have a guy like that size. And also he's still kind of learning the scheme. So that's been an issue too. Cam has his moments, even though I think he's been great. Fournier, my God, we haven't even mentioned him. Fournier. All that being said,
we can leave Fournier out of this. I think that's the thing. It's I'm kind of over talking about Fournier and even Randle to an extent, just because these, I don't know that there's that much productive conversation around these players anymore. Evan Fournier is a complete negative at this point. I think that talking about players in their head, he can't get out of his own way. There was no reason, obviously, for him to play the entire fourth quarter against OKC, but that's
ridiculous
to death, it seems already. I think that, to your point about Hartenstein, I think it's very interesting that we talk about Tibbs' scheme, and we all know what it is at this point, the kind of pack the paint and over help on drives and then sprint out and contest shooters. It's just interesting that scheme has led to one of the worst defensive rebounding teams in the league.
Yes,
they're 26th in defensive rebounding,
and that's Hartenstein.
Hartenstein definitely struggles on the boards there. It's just it doesn't really make sense if your scheme is to, I don't know, to pack the paint to an extent. And then you're not getting the boards. It's not I don't know. That's very frustrating to me, but it's this overhelping scheme that, Benji talked about it, I think on Twitter, and he's said it before, this is an outdated scheme. In today's league, where players are this good at 3-point shooting, where, we say that the Knicks are giving up league average from three. League average from three this year, and it's much different than league average from 3 15 years ago when Tibbs was really in his heyday. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's just, this scheme by design gives up a ton of open threes. And to your point, in years past, that's also been the case. I'd say eye test, there's a lot more wide open threes.
I would agree.
This year. And maybe we're not targeting it, because I remember 2 seasons ago, bubble season, it was, the Knicks are giving up threes to the right players, right? They're making sure that the best guys aren't, and there's more method than madness there. And then there was a little regression last year. I don't know. This year, it's just anybody is getting wide open threes. The Celtics was most indicative of that. And I think that Tibbs' scheme of overhelping, players know that coming in, right? You don't need to do a whole lot of scouting to know that Tibbs has been running the same scheme for years. Opponents are ready for that. For the pack, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was taking one hard dribble into the paint, one dribble towards the rim, and the defense was collapsing. And yeah, it was. I mean, he knew that was happening. Several steps ahead, and was just easily getting guys wide open threes.
I think the argument in favor of what you're saying is that the growth curve. I'm going to get into some math here. The growth of 3-point shooting in the league over the last several years, as more and more kids who grew up watching Steph Curry are now entering the league. I mean, as we watch a 7'4" alien take one-legged, 3-pointers, that growth is not linear. It is closer to exponential. So whereas Josh Giddey is a quote unquote bad 3-point shooter. He's not a good 3-point shooter if you just look at his percentages and compare them to league average. But even a guy like that, who is again a bad 3-point shooter, if you give him room, he's probably going to hit the shot. Whereas not that long ago, there were a lot of players who teams would put out on the floor, and if you gave them an open above the break 3, the odds are they probably that was a good shot that you wanted to allow. That is changing. That said, I still think you can have this as a base scheme. I think you need to be able to adjust, but I think you could have it as a base scheme if you get the requisite effort. And I'm hesitant to say that the scheme doesn't work at all in the game today with the level of effort that we've seen from the starting unit in particular, which at one point for half the games included Fournier and still includes Randle. And we talked about RJ and all of these sorts of things. So, and
effort's kind of a taboo word a little bit and I don't know that it's all effort.
Urgency? Is urgency a better word?
I think urgency might be better. And a lot of it is technique. I keep quoting Prez's thread, but the technique that we saw from RJ's closeouts, that's pervasive. It's not just him who's guilty of this. This is stuff that probably could and should be coached. I think could be, the standing straight up on the closeouts. I think players know not to do that at this point. They're professional basketball players. And if we're talking about it, they know it. But it needs to be drilled. It needs to be second nature. And I think that probably urgency is the right word, because I don't think these players are dogging it night in and night out. That's not the team that we're watching. These guys aren't, there's no one's giving up. I think that, I don't know if this scheme works with this personnel, frankly. Jalen Brunson doesn't have the tools. Jalen Brunson does not have the tools to run out and contest. When Alec Burks was your point guard, as much as we all didn't like that on the offensive end, he's big, he's long, he could run out and contest and cover ground. Jalen Brunson, for as hard as he plays, takes a ton of charges. Love to see that. He can't contest jump shots. Period. That's just, he can be stout in the post and not move, but guys can still shoot over him. So I do question whether this scheme is going to be compatible with this group of talent.
And hey, if Tibbs can't see that it's not compatible, It's one of the reasons he shouldn't be here. If he's trying to coach it up and the guys aren't taking the coaching or responding to it, it's another reason he shouldn't be here. Like the reasons why he shouldn't be here, for as much as I am, I think, on the side of people in theory who are like, we're really putting this on the coach. Like, I get that. But at the same time, the reasons are starting to pile up, and you can't just be like, it's a really flaw of the roster. Randle's the real problem. The front office didn't know what it was doing, yada, yada, yada. You have to put a lot of this on Tibbs. We've said enough about Tibbs. One other thing I want to get your opinion on, and I know we said we weren't going to talk about Randle anymore, but it's not a question about Randle, but it's a question about more about Obi, but kind of about Randle too. We just talked a lot about RJ. Now, if they trade Randle and keep this coach, which I would imagine if they did trade Randle, which I know hasn't been rumored at all, but just let's, for argument's sake, say that they traded Randle and they kept the coach. RJ goes back to probably his usage from last year, right? You would figure?
Yeah, probably. You'll see an uptick there for sure.
Yeah, big uptick. Jalen Brunson probably does about the same as what he's doing now, maybe a little bit more. So, like, it's one less guy to, draw two to the ball, as Tibbs always likes to say. Obi is a very unique sort of player. And obviously he's firing away from three. He leads the team in 3-point percentage. He leads the team in threes attempted per 36 minutes. He's like starting to shoot off movement and like funky play design to get him threes. And it's like, it's wild what's happening. And credit to him. He is not Julius Randle, and that you're not going to just throw him the ball and like wait for someone to, come and put, double him and go from there. What do you think of what this offense might look like if you just literally Julius Randle disappeared and Obi Toppin, it gets dropped into the starting five?
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of quote or paraphrase Fred Katz, because he was on the low post, which is very cool. I know those are a couple of friends of the pods there. And I think Fred Katz has said this on your show too, but Obi's greatest strength is his quick decision-making. And I mean, that's just facts. Like even though he's not going to draw two to the ball, like he is going to, when he's on the ball, but when he's off the ball, he's going to cut hard, right? That's going to cause defense. That's going to put two on him off the ball. Like there are other ways to get two on the ball that aren't classic at the nail ISO.
Yeah.
Like I do think that, Randle's absence, it would take a lot of adjusting to, because some of these players have really gotten used to that style of play. And even Jalen Brunson has spent his whole career with guys who are very ball dominant, but I don't know. What do you have the number in front of you of what the offense is with Julius Randle on the floor? I want to pull that up because
I have it right here. So Julius Randle on the floor this season, it's a good number. Offensive rating he's at 112.9. And all of the starters, they have a good offensive rating. Like Jalen Brunson's 112.6, RJ's 113.8. When those guys sit, Julius Randle off the court offensive rating 103.7. Which, and again, RJ off, it's a bad offensive rating. Jalen Brunson off, it's a bad offensive rating. The thing that those numbers are interesting to me though or why I think they need to be taken with a grain of salt, is any numbers where you just have Rose and Quickly on the floor offensively, they drop off a cliff without Brunson. And if you have Quickly out there without Rose or Brunson, avert your eyes, IQ fans. It's like they're scoring like 80 something points per 100 possessions. So I think those have skewed things a little bit.
But I also think that like Quickly and Brunson together have a ridiculously high.
Oh yeah. They're Quickly with Brunson is like awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that there would be paths to solid offenses without Julius. I think what he's been doing in offense, some of that has been reliant on a recent uptick in 3-point shooting that I don't know that I trust entirely. I think Minnesota he hit 8 threes. And I think a lot of this talked about how that the process wasn't good. He was just making shots. Sometimes he'll do that. Other games he'll go ice cold. Sometimes he'll like take the offense upon himself and kind of grind it to a halt. I saw that. I feel like that's what happened in Brooklyn. So I don't know. I
that was a one-on-one matchup, Tom. You didn't get the memo.
He says, "I'm coming all night." That's what you guys, on the telecast. I'm coming all night, and unfortunately, he did. So, I think that to your question, though, again, like Obi has different skill sets that can attract the attention. I think Fred Katz was talking about his fake DHOs and Zach Lowe called him the quarterback keepers, how he's so good at those.
Love that.
He's very good at those. So there's just different ways to generate offense that I think Obi, look, we all just want to see it at this point. Like that was one of the few things where we did like an over-unders thing on Talkin Knicks and the over-under was set at 20. And I took the over pretty adamantly. I was like, this is definitely going to be an over. I don't know what he's averaging right now, but I bet it's a healthy under right now.
What, minutes per game?
Minutes per game for Obi Toppin.
I'm sure Andrew probably knows this number by heart I should know the number by heart because I have a bet with Mr. Katz on this. If I had to guess, I swear I'm not looking at the stat right now. I'm going to guess he's currently averaging 17.6 minutes per game. Let's see how close I am.
17.8.
Okay, that was close.
Lowball it. No.
Lowball it.
Do you want the Obi Randle together number?
Can I guess it again?
Bad.
Sure.
35.
Higher.
42.
Wow. 42 minutes, 12 seconds.
Okay.
But the numbers aren't good on that right now.
They're
right?
they're minus 11 and 11.9 in those 42 minutes, which is like, we wanted to see it. I still do want to see it, to be honest,
let's end here. Can I give you my solution to fixing the 22-23 Knicks?
Let's hear it.
To the extent that a team without a star player can be fixed.
Actually, and real quick before you do it, has your opinion of the team materially changed? Like in terms of the number of wins you think this team is going to net by end of season, has your opinion changed?
I think I went on record and said 43 because I always try to be hopeful in my public predictions.
You do?
Internally, that I'll put it this way. What I say is like, I think the Knicks will win this many games is like, I have a range before the year and I will say the high end of that range. And Andrew Claudio, Lord strike me down if I'm lying. Am I lying about that in terms of like our offline conversations about what I think the Knicks would be capable of this year?
It actually seems to lean more negative to offline conversations.
Exactly. You're proving my point. So I think for me, I was like 39 to 43. And if you ask me, do they have a better chance at like 45, 46 or like 33, 34? I probably would have said better chance at 33, 34. Ooh. Has that number changed in my mind? I probably a little bit low. Like if you asked me to put a number on them right now today, I'd probably go 35, 36.
Really? Oh, that's quite low. Okay. I'm over here thinking like this is still a 40 win team. Is that ridiculously optimistic? I know.
No, I don't think it's ridiculously optimistic.
I just, before the season, I thought it was kind of a 500 team. They're pretty close to that right now. I know we all know they've got the tough schedule coming up. Utah might come back to earth. Who knows what's going on there? We'll see. I think that if this season ends in the 30s, that I think that would be a pretty big disappointment. But I'm still. My opinion hasn't changed that much. I think Jalen Brunson has been. We all think he's been very good. Just what the team needed at the point guard position. That like there's silver linings here. You and I happen to be recording this after probably the worst, two of the worst losses of the season between the Nets game and the OKC game. Yep. So with a Detroit win sprinkled in there, that honestly I didn't take much from. So no. Like I think that we're doing this at like a kind of a dour down moment in the season. Hopefully a nadir. I mean, with the upcoming schedule, likely not quite a nadir, but I think I'm still leaning towards. I think that certain things are going to tick up. Jalen Brunson's 3-point shooting is in the 20s. I don't think that's going to continue. It's not like he's taking like super difficult threes. I think that RJ Barrett's shooting is just going to improve. I think it started to improve a little bit. I think that there's going to be kind of wake up call at some point, and guys are going to start to play a little bit better on the defensive end. And hopefully that comes sooner than later.
As my wife is texting me that she needs help with 2 sick children in the back. So I'm going to do this very quick and I'm going to let you go. My solution to fixing the Knicks, I don't believe that this team can even approach 40 wins unless one of Thibodeau or Randle go. And I suspect, and I think if Thibodeau goes, it's not going to change my opinion that much. I think if Randle goes, there's a chance they resuscitate this. I would start Hartenstein. I would start Obi. I would start either Quickly or Grimes at the shooting guard for defense primarily. I honestly might lean Quickly, but Grimes is fine. Slot Cam in as your backup 4 with Mitch. So make up for some of the defensive rebounding deficiencies. Keep Rose in the rotation. Potentially move to a 9-man rotation because I'm not giving Fournier any more minutes either. And I don't believe Deuce is ready. And I don't know if you have to shoot Randle to outer space. I'm not even accounting for them bringing back a player for Randle that would need to go into rotation. If they do, that's fine. That's where I'm at. And I think that's their best chance of rescuing the season.
How realistic do you think any of that is?
I don't think the concept of them moving on from Julius Randle is nuts. But, and this is the big but, I don't think it's going to happen I don't think it's going to happen before game 20. And I have very little faith that they are going to be anything but, like, if they were 8-12 after game 20, I'd honestly be like pleasantly surprised. Yeah, like, I don't think they're going to win multiple games before game 20.
Look, when I make predictions, I kind of lean a little conservative. I think that stasis is kind of like the most likely thing. That's not obviously that's like the opposite of a hot take and kind of boring, but I think this squad kind of is what it is. I don't see huge moves being made before the trade deadline. I really don't.
Maybe not.
But I think this unit can be better. I think that they're still getting reps together. I think that I'm going to remain optimistic, and I just think RJ is going to get better. I really do. I'm still holding out hope for all the bad stuff I said. I think that he had a really rough start to the season, and he's going to turn it around, and that's where I'm at with him. So, I feel like, after this conversation that I'll probably lose Twitter followers, but no, I'm going to end it with some hope. I really do think RJ is going to turn it around.
Tom Piccolo, you're amazing. Thank you so much. I love you. I love when you come on here. We always have, I always learn something. It always makes me think. I know we did it at the top of the show, but tell the folks at home where they can find you.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom_Piccolo. You can listen to me and some of the guys from Talkin Knicks on any podcast platform. We're also now on YouTube. I'm putting some of the video breakdowns on YouTube as well. So follow us there. And I appreciate you guys having me on.